Earlier today, I watched the season 5 finale, the last episode of The Boys TV show ever. My dumbed down viewer brain that just wasn't really thinking too deeply about it, enjoyed it. I just thought it was okay, but I am a writer. I've been writing fiction for 18 years, and as a writer, I was pretty disappointed with certain elements of the finale. I'm going to talk about mistakes I believe the boys made that made the ending feel empty, and I'm going to break it down so that you can avoid making these mistakes when you're writing your own endings to your stories. Spoilers for the whole The Boys TV show. Now, the first mistake that the boys made was that there was zero tension. Tension is the prerequisite to satisfaction. If you take every plot structure, it could be the 3-act structure, it could be Dan Harmon's story circle, the 7-act structure, the hero's journey, they all have a moment where it seems like the protagonist is going to lose. Whether it's a superhero thing, epic fantasy, whether it's romance, tragedy, there is a moment where it seems like the protagonist is going to lose. This episode, this finale, should have had a moment where it seemed like the boys were going to lose, except there wasn't one. There was not a single moment in this episode where I thought that the boys might actually fail in their plan. Homelander wasn't written to be the threat that he has been built up to be. Earlier on in the episode, he took a billionaire up to space and then came back down in like a second. And yet, he was punching Butcher and Butcher was just flying a few feet. It doesn't really make sense. There wasn't any consistency in how Homelander was written. If you go back to the early seasons, they were always building up that at any moment Homelander could lose it. He's so powerful, he could basically destroy the whole world, take out all the nuclear powers. He could snap and go crazy at any moment. And yet, I did not feel that at all in this final episode. The whole series built him up to be such a massive threat, and he was defeated in a fight in one room. The fight didn't even destroy the room. It was so obvious what was going to happen, that he was going to lose his power. There was no tension whatsoever. I believe it was the right end to Homelander's arc to lose his powers and then essentially become the sniveling coward that he has always been, and for it to happen on camera so the whole of America could see it. What I believe happened is the writers had that ending in mind and then just wrote the story to get to that ending all in one episode as fast as they could without actually thinking logically about what they have built up to or what actually follows each step of the way. They just wanted to get there as easy as possible. They decided to ignore the fact that if Homelander wanted to, he could grab Butcher, fly up into space in 1 second, then come back down. I mean, he tried to escape a couple times, except come on, he could have escaped. How did they stop him from escaping? They kind of grabbed him and Ryan came in. In an earlier episode, Homelander was moving as fast as A-Train, but he couldn't escape the room. That's what I mean when there was no tension, because they just made Homelander just be exactly as powerful as they needed to in the moment, and they ignored everything else that was built up. Compare it to season 1. I think the first 3 seasons of The Boys were incredible, and I will get to that in a moment. But compare it to season 1 and how much tension there was when the boys were trying to figure out a way to defeat Translucent. How tense it was when Homelander came to investigate. I genuinely was thinking, how are they going to get out of this? In this final episode, there was none of that, and it's a shame. Starlight didn't know that the sea had rejected the deep. So why would she take the superhero that is the most powerful in the sea to the beach? It doesn't make sense logically for the characters, but for the writers it makes sense because they want the deep to die in the sea. Annie doesn't know this, but the writers do. So they just have it that the deep is brought to the beach by Starlight, and she does her final move that pushes him in the sea. They filmed that as if she knew she was doing the final move. It was so built up, a bit of slow motion, zoom in on her face. But logically, in the story, that is the dumbest thing she would do. Why would she blast the deep into water after taking him to the beach? And again, that was the correct ending for the deep, to be offed by the sea creatures. I agree with that, but there was no emotion behind it. There was no tension. There was no will there, won't there be. It was just ticking boxes. Another thing on the tension side is that no one in this final battle was hurt or even suffered anything. Butcher and Ryan lost their powers. Okay, that was it. Big deal. They don't care. Why should we care if they don't care? Butcher hates powers anyway. Ryan never even mentions it. He wasn't very attached to his powers. The lesson we can take from this is that if there is no weight, there is no tension, then the emotional beats are not going to land. It's not going to feel satisfactory for the audience. It's not going to hit them where it hurts. We should have been worrying about Starlight, about Huey, about about Butcher, Ryan, Kimiko, all of them. We should have been thinking, are they really going to do this? Is Homelander actually going to win? Are they really going this way? The boys could not do that, and they had to. That was the only way they could make the ending emotionally hit, because again, I think every character arc ended where it should be. It's how they got there that was the problem. Lesson 2 is about subplots and how every subplot should have its place in the story and should affect the ending. This is about V1, the infamous V1. V1 was such a major subplot throughout this whole season. There were episodes spent on the race between Homelander and the boys finding the V1. Homelander could become immortal, the boys had to stop it from happening. It's actually a good idea. It wasn't done well, but it's a good base idea. But here's the issue. Once Homelander got it, how did V1 change anything about the ending? It supposedly made Homelander what? More powerful? Immortal? I didn't see that. He seems less powerful after V1 than he did before. Him when he was chasing A-Train seems more powerful than the fight he did against Butcher and Kimiko and Ryan in the ending. What did V1 actually change? If we had cut V1 from existence in this story, the same exact thing could have happened in the finale. Nothing changed. The only reason Homelander wanted V1 and the reason why they put V1 is so they could make him immune to the virus. They did not need multiple episodes of V1 for that. They could have just made it that Homelander already had V1, that Homelander was too strong for the virus, whatever. There was no reason to have that subplot in. I'm not even going to talk about the virus and how it came from Gen V, so they had to fit it in so it didn't make a plot hole, and the dangers of mixing stories, and I'm not even going to get into that. Let's just focus on this season. The V1 subplot had absolutely no effect on the finale. And if you are writing a story where a subplot has absolutely no effect on anything else, then cut it. That's a tough test, but a subplot should either develop character or develop plot. The V1 storyline did absolutely nothing. It did not develop any character. Let me rephrase that. It did develop Soldier Boy, and it did develop Bombsight and other prequel characters. Soldier Boy had zero effect on the finale. He was gone. They just got rid of him at the end. They're like, okay, you're out the story. It loops into another subplot that should not have anything to do with this story. Leave that for the prequel. Leave that for a sequel. Leave that for whatever when it actually makes sense. These subplots did not affect the finale. Now, I actually like it that they made it essentially the original boys, minus Frenchie, added Starlight, versus Homelander. That's how it started, that's how it ended. I like that. Again, the boys hit all the right plot points. It just got there in the completely wrong way. But think about this finale and think about the finale of season 3. It's practically the same episode, including Ryan. The only difference was that in season 3 they failed and in season 5 they succeeded. I actually think this story would have been better served off if they ended it in season 3, gonna be honest, because we essentially went through a whole of season 4 and season 5 to get back to the same ending that could have happened in season 3. But in season 3 the tension was at its highest. Season 1 amazing, season 2 amazing, season 3 amazing, tension is at its highest, then they failed. That's why actually leading into season 4 there was so much tension, because season 3 upped the tension to the peak and then they still failed, and we were all thinking, how on earth are they going to defeat Homelander? Well, actually the same exact way they could have done it in season 3, that's how, but we just need 2 more seasons to get there. Only the point of Homelander getting V1 so they can't use the virus on him is not strong enough, in my opinion, to create a reason for that subplot to be there. They should have focused on things, like I said, that develops character or develops plot. Both of those should lead directly into the ending, and none of that happened. So for your own writing, it can be harsh, but think about it. If a subplot does not develop character, does not develop plot, and does not actually have something to do with the ending, get rid of it. Kill your darling. Someone said that about writing. I don't remember who said that. Put in the comments who coined the kill your darlings term so I can remember. But it's true. No reason for the V1 plot to be there. You know, there's a term that's been used around on the internet a lot called filler. I feel like it's sometimes overused. I think it probably came from anime, right? Where lots of long anime would use filler so they don't catch up with the manga. And I think that's come into the Western world and they use it on things. I've heard them say it about From season 4 as in it's filler. No, it's not filler. Or they use it about shows where maybe nothing massive is happening, but it might be developing character instead of plot. And people who just want explosions will say, oh, it's just filler. No, often it's not just filler. But I can honestly say that the V1 subplot in season 5 was filler. The Boys season 5 finale, for me, did everything right on paper. If you said to someone, well, this character ended like this and this character ended like this, it would be like, yeah, that makes sense. However, it still fell flat. And what I have outlined in this video, I hope will help you to avoid those same mistakes when you're writing the endings to your stories.